Mr. White, I mentioned in the opening statement 177 leaking tanks at Hanford. Is that the right number, and what are we doing?
So that's the total number of tanks that we have at Hanford, sir, but it's not the number that we believe are leaking.
Do you have a number on those which we think are leaking?
Yes, sir. There are two tanks at Hanford that we believe are actively leaking. Over the 70-year life of the site, we believe over 60 of the single shell tanks have leaked at some point in the past. I think this highlights, the importance of a couple of things in terms of our ability to manage that aging tank infrastructure. One is it highlights the importance of the mitigation measures that we've taken over the past 3 decades to ensure that we're managing the risk of that aging infrastructure. For those single shell tanks that are the most vulnerable, we've pumped out most of the drainable liquids from those tanks starting in the 1980s. And so for the actively leaking tank we identified recently, for example, most of the liquids in that tank had been pumped out.
So you're triaging the tanks according to their risk?
Yes, sir. And we've also installed pump and treat systems in the tank farms that prevent the contamination from the history of operations at the site from reaching the groundwater. We've built up a tank integrity program to ensure that we are monitoring very closely the levels in the tanks and also monitoring the integrity of the infrastructure.
Do you feel confident in your groundwater protection efforts? Because this site, I understand, is not all that far from the Columbia River.
The tank farms are several miles from the Columbia River, so depending on your
But groundwater travels.
And the groundwater does travel. It takes a number of decades for contaminants to migrate from the tanks to the groundwater, but we have every indication that the pump and treat systems that we're putting in place are in fact very effective. I think this does highlight, though, the importance of moving forward to the ultimate solution, which is to treat and dispose of the tank waste at Hanford.
And my understanding is there's a glassification process for what's coming out of the top part of the tanks. But what about the really bad stuff that's in the bottom? Is that going to be the same process, or there's a grout process, I understand. Is that the answer for the more contaminated?
For the low activity vitrification capability we're standing up now, that treats the low activity part of the waste stream.
Right.
The sludge that you're talking about that typically is in the bottom of the tanks will most likely be a high level waste component. There's also a vitrification capability that we need to stand up to treat that as well. We're currently in discussions with the state of Washington on the best approach to use to stand up that vitrification facility over the course of the next decade or so. Those two capabilities together, however, don't treat all of the tank waste at Hanford, and this gets to the need for supplemental treatment capability. This committee in the past has been very interested and very helpful in pushing us to do research and development into options to do that treatment of the supplemental waste streams. We had an FFRDC look at this in 2017. There were options ranging from grouting to vitrification to steam reforming. We haven't made a decision yet on those options. Last year's NDAA asked us to update that R&D effort. We're in the process of doing that. We've contracted with Savannah River National Lab to do that update. We're also working with the national academies to look at the study as the labs do that R&D effort. At some point over the course of the next few decades, we will begin to also need to stand up those supplemental capabilities in order to really get to the bulk of the 54 million gallons of tank waste that exists.
I sit on the Energy and Natural Resources Committee with Senator Wyden and Senator Cantwell, so I'm channeling them now. But you've used decades twice. One is in the motion of groundwater, and the other is finding the solution. There is a danger here. I mean, there are some deadlines, and do you feel that we're making adequate progress?
I do. I'm very, very impressed with what the site has done in terms of our ability to stand up the initial vitrification capability on the low activity side. I believe we'll meet our regulatory milestone of having that up and running by the end of December 2023. We're currently working with the state of Washington and the EPA, trying to figure out what the next approach is going to be on the high level side. I'm hopeful we can come up with something that's feasible and practical from a technical perspective, but I agree with you, time is of the essence.
Thank you. And Admiral, you deal with waste at Idaho National Lab. Is that program on track? Can we feel some confidence there?
Yes, sir. You should feel some confidence there. I have I ship my spent fuel to Idaho and package it for interim storage in steel containers, and then put it in concrete overpacks. I have today over 75% of my spent fuel is in a concrete overpack in road-ready storage. And additionally, we have responsibilities and commitments to the state of Idaho. I have a near-term commitment to have any fuel that was in the pool before January 1st, 2017, had to be out of the pool by January 1st, 2023. And I'm going to meet that milestone 18 months in advance of the milestone. So you should have confidence with what we do, and we will continue to do that. The spent fuel handling facility that we're building out there will allow us to continue to process that fuel and also to continue to meet our responsibilities with the state of Idaho and to do so in an environmentally responsible way.
Thank you. Senator Fisher, any further questions? I want to thank all of you for your testimony here today. Again, apologize for being late at the beginning of the meeting. But I also want to thank you for the important work that you're doing. This is some of the most sensitive and important work in our society. Each of you has a different aspect of it, and I just so respect your attention to the detail and know that you have the support of this committee, and also know that you're doing a significant service to the country. So thank you all. Without further questions,